I hope you are successful at solving the assignment. If not, don't worry. We are going to discuss the solution now inside this lecture. You can compare the solution with what you have and what we are discussing and correct your solution so that your solution also will become perfect. So now here the job is very easy. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the content present inside the categories, all this content, and I'm going to paste this just under the new API path by giving a tab space. So I have pasted that. So now here we have to make certain changes. So here the very first change that we have to do is we just have to change the value against this in field from query to path. So that's the very first change that we have to do. As soon as you make this change, you will see on the right hand side you are getting an error saying that whenever we are using this path as an input, the required property is required. So it's very funny message. The required property is required. So it's like tongue twister. So what it is saying is you just have to define the required attribute. And let me do that like required. First, I'll try to mention false. So then again, it is going to throw another error saying that whenever we are defining the path parameters, the allowed values for required is always true. So this is how the Swagger editor will always keep you corrected. It will always complain along with the what are the valid values, how to fix that. So that's the beauty of using Swagger editor. I can do the same job by using a notepad or some text editor, but that's going to be very tough because no one will be there helping you to correct for any compilation issues. So here let me correct this required as true. So now the error should be resolved. So the very next things that we need to correct here is first let's make sure everything is correct. Summary is making sense, and description we can say like returns the list of categories supported by Easy Shop. That also makes sense. So since we want to have the path parameters, we need to make sure we are mentioning these parameters, and since I can mention any number of parameters, this hyphen has to be there indicating that this is one of the list element under the parameters. So the parameter name that I want to follow for my path params is category ID. The same name has to be present inside this placeholder. So if you try to make it different, then definitely you will get an error. So let's make sure that both placeholder name value that you have mentioned here, the same name is matching here under the name field. And next under this in field, we need to make sure we are passing the path as a value since we want to go with the path params. And definitely, as I said, required has to be true. And next, since we have to describe what is the type of the category ID, is it an object, is it an integer, or is it an string? So that's why we need to use this schema whenever we want to explain the type of our data. So the type is integer, the minimum value I want to support here is 100, the maximum is 1000, and example here let's make it to 102 just for fun. So here you can see the example is not present inside the schema because whatever example value that I am trying to convey here, this is applicable to this param which is category ID. So that's why the example is present on the same line location where the schema is present. So please make a note of it. And after that, once we are satisfied with the parameters, like everything is correct on the parameter side, we just have to define how our response structure is going to look like. So for the same, we just have to start with the responses. And after that, since we can define response structures for various response codes, for now we are going to declare only for the 200 response code, which indicates successful response. So that's why I'm not going to change anything here. I'll just keep it as 200. Description also will remain the same. And after that, we just have to mention this content. What is the content format that I'm going to follow is application/JSON. So that's why we have to give this value. And now, since we have to describe how our response schema is going to look like whenever I follow JSON, so that's why we need to give this schema keyword here. And after that, since we decided to not use the array but only as an object, what we can do is we can remove this type array. And whenever we are using array, we have to use items. Since we are not going to use the array, we can remove these items as well. So if I remove that, I can bring all this content before few spaces, like I can move them before. So now you can see under schema, I have a type of object. And since I have mentioned the object as my type, I need to mention the properties inside my object. So definitely the object properties has to be similar to the another API which we have declared, because they both has to return the same data, which is categories data. So the properties are category ID of type integer, and the next one is name is the property name of type string. So with this, we have successfully defined another API which is supporting the path params. And you can also see the same inside this Swagger UI. So let me drag this towards the left so that you can see clearly. So you can see this is how it is going to look like. And if I click on this, you can see now, since it is required, it is showing that asterisk mark with a red highlighted font. So this clearly indicates to my consumers, always pass this category ID inside your path, otherwise you are not going to get a valid response. So the example value is being displayed here, and the response also it is displaying. Like this is how 200 response structure is going to look like. Now if you go and check the schema, it is not an array, it's just an object which has category ID and name of type integer and string respectively. So I know you have an question here, like we want to see how the try it out is going to work in this scenario. So let me click on this try it out. So now first let me give something like outside the boundary of my minimum and maximum. So I have given 4 5s. So let me click on this execute. So it is not accepting. So this is working perfectly. So the valid value here that I want to give is 105. So now if I click on this execute, so you can see the request URL, this is how it is going to look like. My 105 is coming as part of path. So that's why we call them as path parameters. Whereas query parameters, they will come with question mark, ampersands appended to your URL. So the same you can see inside the curl command also. And of course, response, you will not get a valid response because this is not a valid working server URL. So with this, we have successfully described another API that is supporting path parameters with the help of Open API specification. Kudos to you and my appreciations to you if you have solved the assignment without looking at this video. But if you followed this video and corrected your solution, don't worry, you will get more and more chances in the coming lectures where you can do practice based upon the assignments that we are going to discuss. So with this, I hope you are clear like how to describe path input parameters also with the help of Open API specification. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Bye.